All right, we are live. We are going to be tackling a Dynasty startup mock draft today. I believe we haven't done one of these since the NFL draft has happened. We've done actual startups. Me and Danny have been in a startup for the last, couple weeks now. But we figured we'd, hop on here with you guys, get a Dynasty startup mock draft going, superflex style as usual. We will drop the link in the YouTube chat here in a few moments, and we can talk about, the landscape, how things have changed, where the rookies are going, who's a winner, who's a loser, all that good stuff. And then, feel free to send any Dynasty questions, any trade questions. Wanye was the first one in here. Yo, happy Saturday, boys. What's going on, Wanye? He says, quick trade question, 16-team, Superflex PPR startup. I have the 103. Got a trade request for my 214, 303, 44. For the 110. Okay, hold on.
This is startup. Okay.
Yeah.
So we're looking at basically the 103. Got a trade request. He wants you to give him the 214, the 303, the 414, and the 503 for the 110. That seems a little steep.
It's hard because it's a 16-teamer, right? So the 214 is
quarterback
basically
equity.
Yeah, like you're not getting a quarterback at 214 because that's 16 players go in the first round and then another 4 like that. We're talking to the 30th pick in the draft. So that's like an early third round pick.
I have an idea for what to do to this for your counter because I think I'll like this counter if you're able to do it. If you're able to get him to throw in a first instead of the second, and maybe you add like a second or a third back on your side, I think I like that because you get your second elite quarterback, and then you could still have the ammo in the mid rounds to build. Plus, you'll have 2 extra firsts of equity from him. So, honest to God, I just want to get my quarterback set up in a 16 team and worry about everything else afterwards.
I agree, but like the 303, 414, 503, like those are your honeypot of picks, man. Like you're giving away pretty much everything. And as much as those firsts are going to help you, like this guy's team's probably going to be pretty loaded up to the point that his firsts are at least mid to late. So I think I would just keep the startup picks personally.
I actually agree because I just realized that's not a 12-team 710. That's not a 12-team 807. Like
no,
we're talking about like
10th, 11th round picks almost.
Hold then. Yeah, for me, it was kind of like in contextually trying to understand the difference between like the 4th round startup pick in a 12-team versus the 7th round startup pick in a 12-team. So in a 16-team, you're going to get a little bit more drastic than that.
Yeah, for sure. Do you have the draft set up? You want to throw me the link?
Yeah, I believe oh, no, I didn't send it. I actually had it in the chat, oddly enough. So you can access that in the private chat, and then once you're in here, we'll get everyone else in here.
Yeah, you can throw it down there. I'll be in there in a second.
Sounds good. I'll throw it into the live stream chat. You throw it into the Discord?
I think we can fill it with the YouTube live, give or take. But if we can't, we'll throw it into the Discord after. So me and Danny are in the chat. Somebody asked, your cats took over. So is there a way to join the mock? Yeah, we're going to drop it right here. So just join in when we drop it.
Yep. Traded Saquon in 103 for Waddle in the 102 where I took Gibbs. I mean, I would prefer Waddle to Saquon. So I think that's a really good deal.
Yeah, no, I agree. That's great news for you, Wanye, that one of the quarterbacks is going to fall to you at 103, and maybe the guy's going to take Hurts or something like that. I'm not exactly sure, but I personally can't sacrifice that much depth to my team just to secure some first rounders and stuff, which I don't anticipate being high, given that guy's going to have a bunch of picks in the honey hole of like talent. What's going on?
Sorry, just quickly wanted to mention on that deal from Anything with a J, you're basically comparing a value bundle of Saquon and JSN versus Waddle and Gibbs. And I believe I have Waddle and Gibbs ranked higher respectively on both spectrums.
Yeah, I think it's pretty close. I have Waddle over JSN and I have Gibbs over Saquon. So yeah, it's definitely pretty solid there though. Working from home today, so that's a pleasant surprise. Yeah, we figured we'd rip a mock draft today.
Amen.
Got to grab those target munchers, right, Danny? Yeah.
Amen.
One quarterback PPR. He traded the 109 James Cook and Hollywood Brown for JSN. I think I'm probably fine with that. A 109 in one quarterback league, like you're probably gonna miss even Charbonnet and Flowers at that point,
and A-Chain probably.
Yeah, potentially. Yeah, like you're probably looking at
Mayer.
Who?
Mayer?
Yeah, probably a tight like Kincaid, and I would imagine Kincaid is off the board. I would imagine Charbonnet and Flowers are potential. Maybe Flowers falls if people are really over invested in like the landing spot narrative, but. I'm definitely cool giving that up to go up for JSN. Get yourself a secure asset there.
By the way, throw the mock draft link in the Discord.
Yeah, I will do that.
Perfect. Got another question here from E Limbs. Superflex Dynasty traded away my rookie 106 in a late 2024 first for Kyler Murray and the 112 rookie pick. Context: I still own the 101, 105, 110, and now 112. People telling me I got smoked. So people are trying to tell you got smoked for basically. I mean, sure, 2024 late first. I'd rather have over the 112, but basically getting Kyler for the 106. I want Kyler every single day. I would want Kyler over the 101. Again, if you wanted to argue Bijan over Kyler, I think that's fine. But at the minimum, Kyler should be worth at least the 102. And at this rate, you got him for the 106, basically, if you equate that 2024 lease first to the 112. So, yeah, I mean, if you were to told me that you paid this for Kyler, I would have been fine with it. But you got the 112 as well. I don't see how anybody would say that you got smoked on this one.
Yeah, I'm on the same page. Anytime I'm acquiring elite quarterback, I feel like people you can't really just look at the trade as like what's the value difference and like what's the value equate to, because you should, if you're acquiring elite quarterback, you should be giving up a significant amount.
Yep. By the way, you are on the clock and you actually got the 101.
Nice. Yeah. Okay. I mean 101, I honestly like, I don't even know who to rank first. I think I've gone back and forth a couple times on which person I actually rank first. I think for me, I'd rather just take the best quarterback in the NFL. As much as like Allen probably is a slightly better fantasy football option, I just want the long-term security of the best quarterback in the league.
Yeah, I mean, I agree here as well. Obviously, the rushing ceiling of Allen, like you can argue from a redraft standpoint, he's QB1 over Mahomes. But I just think like long-term, they both have elite ceilings. We're talking about top 3 quarterback ceilings any given year. The thing that I come back to is like, yeah, if Allen were to get hurt, like his value wouldn't fall, sure. But I think that even less of a case for Patrick Mahomes, if that makes sense. Like if Patrick Mahomes like tore his ACL, like he would still be the clear-cut 101 in Superflex. Whereas I think I can maybe see a scenario where if Allen got hurt, that Hurts could overtake him. I don't really think from a consensus market value standpoint that can happen for Mahomes. Again, we're talking like slim margins here, but we have to when we're talking about the cream of the crop and top of our startups.
Yeah, I think too, down play is something that nobody would take seriously for Patrick Mahomes. If Mahomes had like a 7-week stretch where he like had like a 6 to 12 touchdown to interception ratio, it literally wouldn't change his value whatsoever. And like Josh Allen had at one point in time a lot of haters. So if he decided to like stink it up for a full season, then people might be overreacting to him a little bit more than Mahomes. Like if Mahomes had a bad season, nobody would fucking care.
And again, for everyone watching, maybe even on live or on playback, yeah, like we're talking about slim chances here. Obviously, we don't go in expecting Josh Allen's just gonna
Alex Savvy, you're fired.
Yeah, Alec, come on, man. What are we doing here?
classic auto pick. Somebody's always gonna do it. The second you get all excited to join the draft, and then you just fucking auto your first pick. It's so classic.
Also, I have the worst pick in Superflex startups.
Yeah, not a great one, if I'm being honest.
If I'm keeping it a buck, I know where I'm leaning, though.
Hot take, Jelani Woods is going to be... Can we not make Target Muncher a thing, please? Like,
yeah.
Already.
The Target Munchers.
Jelani Woods being a Target Muncher would be shocking to me, because I think the Colts might throw the ball 440 times this year.
He's going to munch his 10% target share on that. Yes, sir. Wait, let me just check who I believe I have Watson here, but let me just take a look. Yeah, I have Watson next, so I will take Deshaun Watson.
The only think wide receiver heavy is the way to go from now on. I mean, if we're talking dynasty startups, I like going heavy at wide receiver, but it really is going to all depend on your room. If your entire room is going wide receiver heavy, which has happened in the most recent startup that we did, sometimes you can get good values on running backs, tight ends, whatever other position they're not valuing highly. So I mean, generally speaking, if you're in a room of like casual players, yeah, you're going to be extremely profitable going wide receiver heavy. But it depends on what your room is like. And I also think wide receiver heavy in the redraft space is going to be a very popular strategy this year. And
especially in best ball.
Yeah, especially in best ball. And I'm getting extremely high values on running backs. And I'm not a running back guy. I'm a little bit more of a running back guy than Danny. But like when I'm getting the guy who finished like 3rd in points per game, Josh Jacobs, at like the mid-3rd round, I'm like, okay, we're going a little far with these wide receivers.
Well, it's pretty crazy because it got to the point, right? People were all all arguing scarcity a couple years ago, that we saw running backs go in 8 of the first 12 picks, 9 of the first 12 picks in the 2020 draft. The year after McCaffrey had his year, Barkley had his year, everybody was taking these running backs, 8 to 10 of them in the first round.
Kenyon Drake was like the fucking 202 that year.
Yeah, no, it's remarkable. I remember the ADP battles we had between Josh Jacobs and Kenyon Drake in the early second. And this is before Josh Jacobs had his breakout year where he was consistently like RB16 in points per game. So it's pretty crazy, honestly, how much we've evolved from back then. But I do agree with you to a certain extent. The only thing I will say is, although there is running back value, it does not mean that you should be taking 3 in your first 4 picks. Like, there is still it's almost inverted now to the point where you take your upside shots, you still treat it like a scarce position, you still treat it like a position you don't want to overinvest in, but you take your calculated risks. And I don't necessarily view as a straight 0 RB being the case anymore. Because I do think now, like the dead zone, for example, let's just say you started wide receiver in your draft. Last year, 2 years ago, you knew for a fact you couldn't take a running back realistically in rounds 4 to 6 because of how dead the actual area was. We're talking about Mike Davis's. We're talking about fucking Mark Ingram when he came over to Baltimore. Like, we were talking about some fucking dead backs, some dead profiles. Now we're looking at the landscape, and we've got guys that have had success before. We have some young pass-catching running backs. We have some young potential, goal line running backs. Like, fucking Jahmyr Gibbs is what, a 4th or 5th round pick at this point on Underdog? Believe like
there's a lot of good players in the
like, it's ridiculous.
I have Damian Pierce is like a 7th round pick. I'm like, okay, like we need to chill a little bit.
I gotta say one thing. Over under Gibbs being selected on the 2-3 turn if this was last year.
I think Gibbs, maybe not even last year, maybe 2 years ago. Like, if it was 2 years ago, he'd probably be a 2-3 turn pick. I think Damian Pierce would legit be a mid-second round pick if this was 2 years ago.
Maybe, yeah. Yeah, so with my trade, we was going to throw in the 2024 first and 2024 second on top of the 110 one. But I'm worried that 24 first might be late, which, yeah, if that's the case, then absolutely not. That's another thing with the first. I was thinking like 12-team first round pick, but it's a 16-teamer. If that thing ends up late, it's virtually useless.
Yeah, I don't really love the board at the moment.
Dak falling to you at the 212?
I love Dak getting him there, but I was hoping Garrett Wilson would have fallen to me, and I could have paired the two guys.
Just go Olave,
I suppose.
Yeah, Olave or Pitts.
Yeah, I mean, Olave would be my highest ranked receiver, I think. So I'll probably go with Chris Olave there, and I could easily turn this thing into a contender by the 4-12 pick if all the young assets go off the board. And I realize Brian was talking about a dynasty strategy, but it also does apply in dynasty as well, because you can build out pretty strong like hero RBs or double hero RBs in startups if your room is extremely wide receiver heavy. Like in our most recent startup, I built out a double hero RB startup where I took I got a phenomenal value on Saquon Barkley. I think I'm in like the 5th round or something like that. And then also I got Kenneth Walker at a huge value because everybody, it was like, I mean, we started the startup right after the draft, so everybody's really overreacting to the Charbonnet thing. But I got those guys as like my double heroes, and I still have a great wide receiver core. I still have 2 quarterbacks that are going to help me with Trevor Lawrence, Dak Prescott as my top guys. And it's a Devy league, so I have some guys in the I have some guys in the system in college right now at quarterback to help me out. But I don't know. I think sometimes we can go too far. Like, when we 2 years ago started talking about like we need to go more wide receiver heavy, there's a certain point, right? Like we only go as far as the value is there. And when we're getting T Higgins in the 6th round in drafts, like, we need to go more wide receiver heavy. But when the T Higgins profile is now a 3rd round pick in draft this year, it becomes different, right? You can actually deviate for running backs at a decent price. You don't have to pay through your ass to get an RB2.
Yeah, no, 100%. And that is the main difference, like you kind of mentioned, that people are more aware of wide receiver profiles ahead of time. And on the inverse, I mentioned like the running backs, I would probably go round 2, round 3 2 years ago. Garrett Wilson, I have seen consistently go at the 1-2 turn. And the ceiling case absolutely is there. And if you want to argue him in the top 15, I think it's fine. The thing is, though, is if this were to be the case, he would have been a 4th round pick. I mean, we saw the exact same case.
Godwin and Calvin Ridley are perfect examples. They were like 3rd, 4th round picks. And even then, people were like, that's too high. People said it was too high for those guys.
AJ Brown coming off a 1,000, I believe almost an 1,100 yard rookie year on 52 receptions, despite not getting playing time in the first 4 or 5 weeks. I remember he was a 4th round pick that year. Do you remember that when
Metcalf was a 5th round pick in the same year?
Metcalf, Brown, McLaurin, like that trio of wide receivers. I think I'm missing one, an obvious
Debo.
one from like Debo as well. They were all like super undervalued, like mid-round picks at that point. Because guess what? Them and the dead zone running backs nowadays have basically swapped ADPs. The running backs you were taking, guess what? In the 2nd round, like you said, 2 years ago, or 3 years ago, whenever it was, when AJ Brown, Metcalf, etc., were in their 2nd year, they're the guys going in the 4th, 5th, where DK, AJ Brown were that year. So it's pretty remarkable.
And that's probably
how much
correct.
Dynamic slipped.
It's probably correct. That's probably what should have been happening. But now it's like the market knows, and you can actually get decent value on some of these running backs in the mid round. So let's stick to Dynasty here. We kind of went on a huge tangent there, but hopefully you guys enjoyed that. Would you swap Wan'Dale for Sky Moore as a Daniel Jones owner in Superflex? I know Sky was on your video the other day. Yeah, so I'm a little higher on Sky Moore, I think, than some people are, because I'm context to the situation. I broke it down in yesterday's video, so if you guys want to check that out, just look at the Players on the Rise video that I put out yesterday. Wan'Dale versus Sky. Wan'Dale showed more, I would say, as a rookie, but he's more limited in terms of like what he can actually become. Like, what's Wan'Dale Robinson's ceiling in Dynasty if he actually hits? Like, he's realistically not going to go higher than like wide receiver 30 or something like that, especially like from a point production standpoint. He can be a PPR wide receiver 3, high end, maybe low end wide receiver 2 in a great season. But for me, I think Sky had a better profile to the point that if he actually does develop, he can become, Golden Tate, Christian Kirk type of option for a Patrick Mahomes led offense, which actually could make him a low end wide receiver 1 in a great season if he can hit. But it all depends on, what your team is looking like. I guess both guys are great rebuilding acquisitions, because Wan'Dale's coming off an ACL tear and Sky's, a young developing wide receiver. I personally would prefer Wan'Dale just because I saw more in his rookie year, but I think it's pretty close if you wanted to take Sky.
Yep, agree there. By the way, I'm sorry, but Kyle Pitts falling to me at the 311 should not be happening.
Yeah, that's pretty crazy. I almost took him at my pick.
Yeah. I ended up overall leaving the first 4 rounds. I did talk shit about how I don't like the 111, but you're telling me if you could walk away from the 111 in the first 4 rounds and have Deshaun Watson, Kyler Murray, Kyle Pitts, and Tyreek Hill, I'd take that anytime.
Yeah, for sure. Where should Lamar go in a startup? I think Lamar is probably exactly where he should have gone. I know Alec auto drafted him here with Prison Mike as his PFP there. But 106 is about where he should go pretty much every time. 105 to 108 is pretty much where his land is.
Agreed. Do you guys just prefer to hold the earlier round picks than in a 16 team superflex? I mean, I do think that I just want to top as high a pick as I can, because I just secure the elite quarterback, to be honest.
Yeah. And I mean, I just don't want to depth and stars are going to matter so much in a 16 team league, to the point that I don't want to sacrifice my high picks for a bunch of mid-round picks either.
The reason why, and I'm glad you mentioned that, because I do think in a 16 team superflex, you're probably not in a start 12, 16 team league. It's probably a start 8 or 9. Otherwise, imagine having to start 12 people when 16 different
Jalen Darden.
Your fucking Jalen Warren's going to be your RB3 at that point. Let's be real. It's going to be a stars matter type of situation, like you kind of said. As we know, as soon as the lineup settings go down, we go from a start 12 to a start 11 to a start 10 to a start 9 to a start 8. People want to show off their teams. Oh, I'm 7 deep at wide receiver and 6 deep at running back and 4 deep at quarterback. But at the end of the day, you should just be consolidating at that point, because if you're starting less than 10 people in your lineup, it just matters what the star production ends up giving you at the end of the day.
Yeah, it's difficult in that format because, you acquire some studs. Obviously, you're going to really dominate that league, but the teams that don't have studs are really going to stink it up. Yeah. In a league where you can only start 2 running backs with 6 starters, would you be more willing to trade, shallow league format, trade Bijan for Garrett Wilson in a 2024 first?
Yes.
Yeah, I'd be willing to do that. I think in a shallow league format, Bijan does carry more value, though, because he's the only elite young running back realistically that we have outside of maybe Gibbs and Hall if he's healthy. So it's tough because I really love Bijan in that type of format, but Garrett Wilson in a first is enough for me to move off of him.
I might have to raise Garrett Wilson even higher in my rankings. He's currently my 19th ranked player in the Superflex, but man, like him, Garrett or AJ Brown's my 18, Bryce Young, Anthony Richardson. I think they're all like in argument with each other. So I'm probably all in on Garrett Wilson. I know I talked about like him going at the 1-2 turn, being a little high. That's just in relation to where I wanted to draft him. Because if you wanted to tell me that he was your wide receiver 6 in redraft this year, I don't think that's outlandish.
Yeah, I got absolutely decimated by the board here. Good Lord. Addison's my highest rated receiver here at the moment.
He was not making it back to me, sadly. Probably Watson or JD, right?
Yeah, I mean, Watson would definitely be. I think I thought this whole room would be taking young players, and all the production went off the board. So I guess I'm going to go young here. I was expecting you guys to all take Watson and, Judy and those guys, but I guess I'll go young. Either Watson here. Does anybody else appeal to me? QJ's off the board, is he? Yeah, he is. Yeah. Okay, so yeah, I'll probably go Christian Watson here at 5-1. I'll build out a young wide receiver core. I'm kind of regretting taking Prescott instead of Stroud now, because if I was going to go young, I probably would have gone with a younger quarterback. But I mean, it's a mock draft.
You got a sure thing, and you got Dak at a crazy good value. So
I did, but like at the same time, I would probably, if this was a real league, I would probably try and shop Dak for the guy who took CJ Stroud right behind me, and just see if I can get like a little Stroud plus on top, just to move off.
Because he's got Allen, Adams,
especially knowing that this guy is Adams and those guys that he's going to try and compete with. I'm sure Dak is more appealing to him.
Yeah, no, for sure. Oddly enough, you mentioned taking Christian Watson, Jordan Addison on that turn there. I actually consider them at the 4 too, because I do think my team, the way it kind of resembles right now structurally, is more of a 1-year punt because Kyler's hurt. We don't necessarily know how to project the Atlanta offense in year 1. Not to mention Deshaun, we're kind of betting on him returning to that status, but you can't pass on the value of Tyreek Hill at the 4-2, in my opinion.
Yeah, agreed. I'm one pick away in our actual startup right now.
Are you?
So, yeah, the board's getting disgusting,
dude,
but
I'm loving how my team's looking on that now, eh?
Yeah, my team's looking pretty decent as well. I went pretty light at wide receiver because I have Amika Egbuka and Malik Neighbors in the pipeline in the Devy draft. And I also went light at tight end because I got Jatavion Sanders in the Devy draft. So I'm feeling pretty good about my team. I think Sam Howell's my quarterback 3 right now, which is a little sketch. But like I said, I have KJ Jefferson, Shadur Sanders, and somebody else. I don't even remember who it is.
I don't have a quarterback 3. I have Will Levis and I have Anthony Richardson. But that, like, again, my quarterback room is very, very risk reward because I also have Drake May coming in next year. I need 2 of those 3 guys to hit. That's the only thing. Like, it feels disgusting having to bake on that, and that's why I always preach taking quarterbacks early in your startup. But I mean, once you got Drake May in the Devy system, you have to maximize the upside of your team. So, I mean, if Anthony Richardson fucking lives up to his billing right now, we're talking about a future first-round startup pick. Drake May comes in next year as a top 5 pick to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. He's probably a 1-2 turn pick. And then Will Levis is like, I got him in the 7th round. You know what I mean? Like, at that point, if he ends up developing into a top 20 quarterback, taking the Kenny Pickett route, for God's sakes, if you were to tell me your quarterback room was fucking Anthony Richardson at his ceiling, Drake May, and then let's just say Kenny Pickett for what Levis kind of represents, not to mention, at least with Levis, we can point to the athleticism and the arm talent for being like ceiling raisers. At least with him, if he were to have a Kenny Pickett season, the market would be higher on him than they are on Kenny Pickett because of those traits.
Yeah, that's probably true. I will say, though, because Pickett has a better situation around him that might factor in. Might factor into his value right now. I'm curious on your take here. So if I were to say in 2024, you had to make a bet right now, over under 2.5 quarterbacks in the first round, would you take the over or the under?
Over under 2.5. I got to take the over because there's so many names we've been thrown into the mix. But I do agree with your point that there's no real front runner for that quarterback 3 spot right now. So maybe the NFL doesn't take him seriously.
Right. And would you also agree that Michael Penix is the clear betting favorite as the 3rd quarterback if there was a betting market for it?
I'll take a look in a second. I have to make a pick. All right, I got Brandon Ayuk. Whatever.
That's a great pick there at 5'11".
Respect. Yeah, I mean Penix, Ewers, McCarthy. I know what's his face? Michael Pratt's been getting some hype in some circles. I know Ryan Leonard's been getting some hype in some circles.
I've seen Bo Nix get hype in some circles. Bo Nix, which is disgusting.
Like, realistically, what that tells me is that if quarterbacks 3 to 11 are this much of a discussion, there's no real quarterback 3 in this class.
It might be that we just don't have any good quarterbacks. Like if it's that close, like we know it's Caleb and Drake, and I think it's gonna maybe be this. But like coming into this year, we probably would have said the same thing about the 2023 class, right? We probably would have
Yep.
been like, it's Bryson, it's Stroud, and nobody else fucking matters. And Richardson is kind of like the wild card this year. We're like, oh, maybe he's like this upside guy. I think, between like Shadur Sanders and like KJ Jefferson, some of the more athletic quarterbacks, maybe one of them can become Anthony Richardson. Maybe not from a like actual tool standpoint, but just like the rise that he saw, in the process. And then, maybe Penix is like the Levis of this class, where he's like, talked up, maybe first round quarterback, maybe slides to second round, maybe actually does go in the first round, whatever.
I would say for Penix, I think honestly Pickett might be a better comparison because he's like that more like steady, like solid athlete, old player, but I don't think he's got the traits like the arm talent or even the mobility that a guy like Levis does. Which I mean, like I'm not trying to discredit Pickett or Penix from an athletic standpoint, but I mean, like I do think that Levis, given the size, given the toughness, like he is kind of better in those situations if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
Or at least from a projectable standpoint.
103 or 112 in Pickens. 103 easily.
Not close.
We didn't say it was tight end premium. Let's just say no, because I mean Pitts probably would have gone a lot higher than it was.
Crackshot, what do you wait, sorry, I just want to point Crackshot, what league are you referring to? What league? Let us know. Go back to where you left off.
What do you I could care less where Dalvin Cook goes. I think he's fucking washed. And also, I want to point out that that video that I did last year, the Sell These Running Backs Now Part 2, where I broke down, like, Dalvin Cook was hitting the age apex. He hit the touch apex. I basically predicted Dalvin Cook's downfall, so I'll definitely take the W there.
I mean, but we were both on it because I remember I brought up, too, how his efficiency drop looked like when Ezekiel Elliott dropped off between 2019 and 2020. And right, people were bashing that, dude. People were
really mad. I went on Fantasy Pros and said that Dalvin Cook was going to be one of the biggest busts in fantasy, and people like hated it. And dude, I would say, I don't know if he was a bust necessarily because he wasn't like bad.
He was. I mean, at points per game, he was like barely top 20, I think.
But like I said, his ceiling was to be fine, is basically what I said. He's going to either be fine or he's going to be terrible and get hurt.
Well, he was technically the running back 11, but he played in 17 games and averaged, how many points per game is that? 236.8 in 17 games. For reference, in 2020, he had 332.8 in 14 games. So, like, it was a big drop-off. And people are going to say, well, he still ran for about 4.5 yards per carry. He's still a solid player. By the way,
he had a couple long touchdowns. That was like the only thing that happened, really.
By the way, I'm seeing this in my screen. Brock, the Florida State quarterback, is Jordan Travis. So he's a solid player too. But yeah, no, with Dalvin Cook, people were like, is he like the RB2 after? Yeah,
people were really high on Cook,
dude. I never understood that. And I remember me and Ron like kept talking about it, but I remember going into the year, I had Aaron Jones as my running back 24, I believe, or not running back 24, overall 24, and Dalvin Cook was like my overall 25 or 26. And he was like, how do you have Dalvin that low? And I'm like, honest to God, this feels like an Ezekiel Elliott situation. And I know people are battling back. Oh, he has the ceiling. He's got this 25 point per game ceiling because people saw what he was doing 14 games in 2020. But I mean, when we're looking at a peak season in 2020 for a 27-year-old running back, or 26 at the time, that's usually not the sign you want to be looking for. The fact that he's gotten worse the last 2 years.
Pretty much, yeah. That was the argument I made, was that like we literally saw the fall off in 2021 from like an efficiency standpoint. And usually when a 27-year-old running back with over 1,000 career carries falls off one season, he's not just going to bounce back the next year. That's not really how the running back position works.
Agreed. Appreciate the super chat from Texas Trill. Would you trade 108 and 110 for the 103? Super bad rebuilding team in Superflex Dynasty. Love the content as always. Go Cowboys. Appreciate that. Go Cowboys, Texas. And with that being said, if you were to tell me that you can flip Quentin Johnson and Zay Flowers into a stud quarterback, whether that's Anthony Richardson or Bryce Young for us, sign me up. It doesn't matter which one's on the board there. You're basically trading fourth or fifth round startup pick with the wide receiver at 108, and maybe the 110 is a seventh or eighth round startup pick, and you're trading that up to go get a secured quarterback asset in the Superflex. Smash that deal, in my opinion, Texas.
Yeah, I have no idea what to do with this other pick here. I think I'll just go like none of these guys are like rebuilding archetype wide receivers, but I think at this point when there's no like perfect fit archetype for you. I'm just going to go with like a value accumulation piece, and I think Dobbins will go up in value this year. So I'll take J.K. Dobbins there with that pick.
Yeah, I was going to say in a not as sharp room, maybe you could have gotten Judy, but love that pick from Catrick.
Yeah, oh yeah, for sure. I was hoping Dotson was going to fall to me at the 6-12, but he didn't end up falling to me there.
Agreed. By the way, if Judy isn't at least a top 4-round pick in redraft this year, I'm going to own 100% of him.
Yeah, I've drafted a shit ton of them on Underdog so far. Hero RB or double hero might be the play this year. I think double hero. So like double hero last year meant you get like your 2 heroes in the first 3 rounds or whatever. But what I've noticed I've done a lot of is I've been building double heroes where I'm getting like Saquon in the 2nd round and then like Damian Pierce in round 6, or I'm getting Josh Jacobs in the 3rd round and Travis Etienne in round 5. Like I'm like, it's my double hero is not how it looked last year. It wasn't like 1-2 turn running back, don't draft another running back. I'm still building a double hero, but it's not necessarily coming in the first 3 rounds, both players, because the value on running backs on Underdog at least is a little bit better. In home leagues, maybe nothing has changed and this point's all moot and everybody's still going to draft running backs highly. But in home leagues, even last year, my league got a lot sharper. And maybe it's because they were all watching my content. I'm not really sure, but
same thing happened to me. Trust me.
A lot of these guys in my home league that were staunch, like give me 2 running backs in the first 2 rounds, truthers, like the guy that won the league built a hero RB and he literally didn't even know what a hero RB was until like last year. So I think the home leagues even are starting to get a little bit sharper when it comes to team construction and not like just fucking go in and draft 4 running backs in the first 4 picks because running backs win you championships like the conventional wisdom was a couple years ago.
Dude, it was remarkable. I remember a couple years ago, like before we started doing content, bro, I remember how much of a running back advocate I was because of every piece of content I heard around me. Everything that you heard back in 2019, 2018 was secure your running backs, receivers are in numbers, like worry about the rest after. And it's crazy how much fantasy advice, how much like just in general access to media people have now. And not to mention the research that has been put in to disprove that theory. The data that disproved that theory as well. That really opened not only our eyes, but every single other person's eyes that makes content now. It basically seems like to a certain degree now, people are starting to like regurgitate the same kind of things that we started talking about a couple years ago.
Yeah, it's crazy because you can't just be like, oh, like before it was pivoting when everybody else was just drafting running backs. And it was very easy to spot and you can get great values, but now people are getting wise to it. So you also have to like keep in mind that, these players can fall to a certain point. It's kind of like there's trends that happen in fantasy football every, so often, every couple of years. There was a trend like we've seen this wide receiver trend happen before after like the 2015 season or whatever, when there was like no good running backs, they all got hurt. Everybody started building, like that's when zero RB first became a thing. People were like, oh, like wide receivers are more reliable and that kind of thing. And then we had a couple really great running back seasons and people kind of shifted back towards running back. And then, it just kind of ebbs and flows. And I think if you can predict when the running backs are going too low for what their projection is, it really is just all project every player individually. Where should they be going? Where are they going? And is it too late?
Yeah.
Because if you have a guy that legitimately has like legendary upside and he's going like in the 3rd, 4th round because people don't want running backs anymore, then we've gone too far.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned that because I do think there's a number of variables that goes into making a pick when it comes to redraft, when it comes to Dynasty. Obviously, we talked about the macro versus micro market influences when it comes to Dynasty, but for redraft specifically, obviously, you can't really play the value game as much in redraft. You kind of just have to play more of a get your guy thing because you're not going to be trading down from the 101 to the 107 and cooping up this guy's 5th round redraft pick. Like that's not typically how it works in most redraft leagues. It's more so you get your pick, you pick at each spot every single time, and you can't really pick and choose when you want to attack a certain tier.
Unless you're doing an auction draft or something.
For sure, exactly. It's a lot more of a fucking what's
open market.
Open market, yeah. Or I was gonna say, in terms of redraft, it's like you're in your spot, you got to stick with it no matter the ups and downs of it, the ebbs and flows of it, right? Yeah. So in terms of redraft, a thing that's really gotten me over the hump recently is understanding where the player's value is, the bull case, the bear case, and where exactly that value aligns in terms of that spectrum. Not to mention, the other thing is, once you've figured out exactly where that player aligns in that spectrum, understanding the vast difference in the bull versus the bear case. Because that'll help you understand, like, is this a player that if he hits can legitimately win me my league? Or is he more so like if he hits a high-end RB2, or if he hits, he's a middle-ish type of wide receiver 2. You got to find the players that are like, I don't want to say bombs because like bombs implies negative, but those like little pockets in each draft every single year that has a player that can legitimately win your league in any spot. A guy that I loved in that spot last year was actually Jalen Hurts. Oddly enough, you see the Cowboys jersey. You guys know I'm a big Cowboys fan, but Jalen Hurts just seemed like such a smash because he was valued in the 6th, 7th round for a player that, like we ended up seeing materializing, could legitimately average you 25 points per game. And that's why he's going in the 2nd round this year.
Yeah, no, it's pretty crazy. That's why I do those videos. Those like what makes a league-winning running back, wide receiver,
Yep.
even the rookie versions of them that I just did, the wide receivers to target and avoid, running backs to target and avoid, is because like we have the data to support like what these guys had. How good was their offense? How good was their offensive line? You know, their individual talent levels, like, you know, reception perception data and fucking, you know, PFF grades, yards per route run, all that kind of stuff. And we don't use it. Like every year, some guys like will literally like crap out in their fantasy league and then adopt the exact same strategy that helped them crap out last year. And they don't change their approach at all. And I think looking into the research and continuing to build that out is the only way to get better and spot these guys. Like some of the guys that I really loved last year didn't work out. Like Michael Pittman was one of them. I thought he had potential to be the next league winning wide receiver, but you know, certain factors go awry. Like the quarterback play was not nearly as good as I expected it to be. And I probably should have seen that coming, because if I had looked into Matt Ryan's numbers, I probably would have noticed that he had fallen off a little bit more than I thought. But you live and you learn, right? Like I'm going to take that into this year. I'm going to make sure I'm not overvaluing, you know, guys like Pittman and Allen Robinson, who I thought were going to be great breakout candidates or great, you know, league winning type of wide receivers last year. Because either their talent was off in Robinson's case, or the talent of the quarterback was off in Pittman's case. So yeah, definitely a lot to learn from these seasons year over year. And I'm glad we get to do this like every year, and every process is documented, where like, you know, you guys sometimes are like, you fucking screwed me over by telling me to draft that player. But like, I kind of like that. Like it stings to the point that you're like, I don't want to make that mistake again. I want to like figure out what went wrong with that.
Yeah, I mean, I like that you mentioned that, because obviously, I mean, we literally talked about on this stream for a good 5 minutes about how we were right about Dalvin Cook. That doesn't mean we got every fucking thing right last year.
Oh, I literally just admitted I was like dead wrong about Allen Robinson.
Dude, 100%. Well, I know you mentioned that as well, but I'm just saying, like, even myself, any fucking analyst out there, if you look through their rankings, if you look through their columns, their sleepers, their fucking bust candidates, their fucking league winners, like, they're not going to have 100% hit rate. Like, at best, you might find a really, really smart, really, really intelligent, well structured in terms of their process type of analyst, and he's getting 60, 65% of it right. And that's the margins that you're realistically watching us for. You're not watching us to hit on 100% of your picks. You're watching us to maybe improve your own hit rate from 40 to 50% to maybe get that slim margin up to 60, 65%. And even if that, like 60, 65%, if you were to tell me
one or two players that you're drafting differently than you would have.
Well, 100%. If you were to tell me that we were talking about 100% or 100 players in an offseason cycle, and 65% of our takes on the players, 65 of the players that we had takes on, ended up materializing the way we had it, you know, sorted out, that's a fucking a phenomenal hit rate.
Well, yeah, because there's so much chaos in an NFL season where sometimes we don't even know the extent of everything. Yeah. Sometimes a player just gets injured. Sometimes he plays through injury and he's inefficient as a result of that. And that's kind of, the double-edged sword of fantasy.
I just want to point that out. That's another big one. I mean, we were high on Zach Wilson.
We were yikes. For us. That was bad.
That's probably like one of the staple memes of us from now on, is that we love Zach Wilson and he ended up being a bust. That's gonna happen. Yeah.
I think part of the Zach Wilson love, it was, I still think it was correct process to some degree. Just like the overall talent around him was, if he busted, it was all on his own ability, but he wasn't good, so he busted. Like, we saw other quarterbacks come into that situation and play well because the talent around Zach Wilson was good.
Well, it's the same process that led to Trevor Lawrence being a top 8 pick this year. The difference is that people were so off of Zach Wilson, the prospect, despite him going 2nd overall. But if you were to basically lay out the scenarios like this, Quarterback X went first overall in his draft, had a really, really bad rookie season, and is going in the third round of the startup. Quarterback Y was the second overall pick, had a bad rookie season, is going in the fourth round of your startup. Once you take away the name of Trevor Lawrence and the name of Zach Wilson from those scenarios, you understand the process. If you're willing to bet in at the first overall pick going in the third round, potentially accruing a value from a year on, why wouldn't you take that same bet, that same risk with the fourth round quarterback that went second overall?
I mean, the answer is watch the tape. That's probably something that we bought in a little too much. The improvements. He played pretty fucking bad his rookie year, and that was definitely on us.
Trevor didn't play that great either, to be fair.
He didn't, but he played better than Wilson did. Yeah. If you just watched him objectively, you were like, he was better. And he was also just so, like, his prospect profile was better too. So he had more to go off of.
That's fair.
And I think that's sometimes, what we overthink a little bit. But
that was another thing too. I think we should have weighed in more is that we were basically valuing Wilson where we would take him. And that was at a point, I believe, where we didn't value the market quite enough. Because if we valued the market more than we did, like we had Zach Wilson, top 15 overall quarterback in Dynasty startups. Mm-hmm. But the market was so low on him where even if we hedged and said he was quarterback 18, quarterback 19, it would have stung that he still missed, but you weren't investing a fourth round startup instead of a fifth or sixth in most leagues where he was going.
Yeah, no, I think I want to popularize the idea that when you're high on a player, rank him 2 or 3 spots higher than consensus, not 11 spots higher. Yeah. There's no reason to do that because you'll look like a genius if it hits. But I mean, I don't care about looking like a genius if it hits. I care about winning and making the correct takes and helping you guys. So if you can still get a player by being 2 or 3 spots higher on consensus than him, you don't need to rank him that much higher or need to take him that much higher. And that's kind of where we've been at with this whole rookie class. I've been higher on Jordan Addison, but I'm literally taking him at the same pick that he goes at. I'm just getting more exposure to him. And within my overall wide receiver rankings, he's a little bit higher than the market has him. So you don't need to go crazy with these takes is basically our point. And I think sometimes we've gone a little crazy with some takes and I'm not going to, maybe get as emotionally attached to some of those as well. For example, this year, we've been staunch Naji Harris haters, man. I'm starting to warm up to him this year, man.
Dude, I raised him in my rankings as well.
I mean, from a redraft perspective too.
Oh, fair, right? 4th, 5th round player. Not to mention that's more influence for us, but
think about it. If he was if you look at his dead zone running back archetype, if you think about Naji Harris.
I still have
a dead zone running back because he's literally going in the dead zone right now. He's like a 4.5 round pick on Underdog. We have a 3rd-year running back who was a 1st-round pick who led the NFL in targets at his position his rookie season. Played through a Liz Frank foot injury last year on an offense that just added a left tackle in the draft, has a 2nd-year quarterback instead of a rookie quarterback now, and has a lot of talent around him, and drafted probably the 2nd-best run-blocking tight end in the class as well. If Harris is healthy, he's going to get receiving work. He's going to get most of the carries. He's going to get most of he's probably not going to have his rookie year workload, but he's still going to be probably one of the better workloads in the NFL weighted opportunity wise. And if he's just better than he was last year because he's not playing through an injury and the offense is better, then he also was the RB7 in the back half of the season. So for me, his profile is not the same as what we usually see out of dead zone running backs. It's one that you should bet on. It's a 3rd-year running back with a receiving workload.
Yeah, no, I see you. Do we have confidence? Who drafted Arch Manning in your league? I believe that was actually Ron, right?
Yeah, I think he drafted Arch and Aller right at the 1-2 turn.
Yeah, I believe so.
Yeah, little psychotic if you ask me, but
yeah, no, that was funny. Hey guys, hey Brock. The lads, they're engaging. My quarterbacks are looking a little weak in the Devy League, not gonna lie. Burrow, Cousins, then no QB3. Yeah, Brock, before you mentioned that, I was actually talking in stream about how mine are probably the most risk reward type of pairing that you could imagine. I have fucking Drake May, Anthony Richardson, and Will Levis. So if that works out, I got the best quarterback core in the league. If that doesn't work out, then it's going to be tough trying to figure out what's going on there because everybody's going to be taking their guys. What?
So I'm picking at 202 in my final rookie draft.
Yeah.
And I figured this room was casual enough that they would let Michael Mayer fall to me in a tight end premium. and he just went at 112.
Pain. Did you have
So
any
now
other
I have
rookie
no
picks?
idea what to do with my pick. What I might do is trade back and maybe take Laporta.
Share your screen. Oh, you already
No,
have it
it's
shared.
not. It's just on my phone right now.
Oh,
Or I might
perfect.
just like after the draft is over, try and trade for Michael Mayer. But yeah, that's
Well,
kind of annoying. I was trying like hell to trade up for him, and nobody wanted to trade with me. I'm like, oh, I'll give you my 202 and like my third next year, and a small piece or something like that. I think I offered a guy 202, my second next year for his third next year, and 20 and one. He had 112, I think, and I was
yeah.
like, I'm offering you a 2-down slip to you to go up from a third rounder to a second rounder next year. I think that was a pretty decent deal. And he didn't want to do that one.
Yep, no, for sure. My favorite team still has a wide receiver room with Garrett Wilson. What the fuck, J Metal?
Yeah, disgusting war chest, indeed.
Oh, that was when right when Crackshot says I would leave that garbage league immediately over because Penix will go round one. Yeah, I mean, I
want Penix to go round one, dude. Like, we want more quarterbacks in next year. We all like, even if you hate the quarterbacks, you always want. Like, I want 6 first-round quarterbacks in every single NFL draft.
Dude, are you kidding me? Could you imagine how good the values are on the flex players if that were to happen?
Exactly, dude. You get 6 first-round quarterbacks, even if they're awful prospects. Like, people are A, going to take them, and B, going to use them as, like, I'm going to use them as, like, trade-down chips and stuff. So, like, this year, I use trade-down chips all the time. I traded down from Bryce Young in one league, picked up Chris Olave in a first next year and the 109 or whatever it was, basically for like a late round pick and Calvin Ridley in the 102. Just that's what first round capital for quarterbacks does. It was obviously Bryce Young. I love Bryce Young. I didn't want to trade down from him, but like when you're getting that type of appeal for a team in my position that didn't need another quarterback, it definitely really helps here. So,
yep. Would you move 2 2024 first, probably playoff picks for the 105, if not the 104? Would you move? I was gonna say, would you move those for Stroud or Gibbs?
I would probably want something back.
Can you get like a second back, maybe?
Yeah, like if you could get a second back, I think I'm cool doing that. And also, like, you're certain that they're gonna be low picks. Like, there's no like look at the teams. Like, if it's one of them is yours and another one's another guy's team, like look at the depth on that team. What happens if they suffer a couple of injuries? Because you don't want those picks to end up being like 2 injuries and it's 103 or something like that.
Yeah. I just like if I'm giving up 2 2024 first, I want to make sure that that's the quarterback. And 105 in particular doesn't guarantee you that. And 104, it's like, while I like CJ Stroud a good amount, like if Anthony Richardson or Bryce Young fell to the 104, I think that would be more of a smash. But I don't know. What do you think about that?
Yeah, no, I think if you got Richardson or Bryce, that would definitely make some sense. But yeah, I would just want something small back. Rest in piss for the Warriors there. Did they win? Is the series done?
Lakers 1-6, baby.
Oh, nice. Okay.
LeBron had 30 points on 14 shots yesterday.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the Maple Leafs got absolutely ruined by the referees and Sergei Bobrovsky last night. So
I mean, to be fair, that tying goal they had to send it to OT was such a weak one by Bob. Tight angle, you need to close off that high shoulder.
But here's the thing. That should have been the winning goal because the second one went in.
Fair. Wasn't it Nylander as well?
The most Mickey Mouse delay of game penalty I've ever seen in my entire life.
Yeah. You want to hear something that's going to make you vomit, by the way, Bush?
What's that?
One of the Panthers or the Hurricanes will be in the Cup final.
Ew.
I mean,
it's just on a silver platter for the Oilers right now.
I mean, they're down 3-2 in their series now.
Did they lose last night? I didn't even see.
Knights. Yeah, they lost to the Golden Knights.
Okay. The Canadian teams are just professional choke artists apparently.
It's possible for us to have one of the most unappealing Final Fours in hockey history. Listen to this, right? So if the Oilers lose, the Final Four is going to be the Golden Knights versus the Stars and the Hurricanes versus the Panthers.
Ew. So disgusting.
Dude, talk about non-hockey states fucking competing for the Cup final.
Yeah, what is it, like an average of 90 degrees right now in every one of those states?
Florida, Carolina, Dallas, and if Vegas beats Edmonton, fucking Vegas. Are we kidding?
We're literally talking about all hot weather places in the final.
Dude, they're the type of fan bases where, I mean, that was more so applied to Dallas and Vegas, but those seem like more of the fan base. I mean, even Florida, where they're more excited about going to the casino after the game than they are the game itself.
Yeah, no, they just get piss wasted at the game. Like that's the fan base in Florida there.
301 and 1501 for 410 and the 810 startup. I mean, if we're looking at this draft right now,
I mean, 1501 is pretty trash. Like that's a pretty useless pick.
It's whatever. So it's basically Chris Olave and the 1501 for the 410, which was like Josh Jacobs, Christian Watson, Jordan Addison. We'll say Jordan Addison. So Olave for Jordan Addison and like Pat Fryer moves Zach Charbonnet. I honestly just want Olave.
Yeah, I think I would rather just have the 301. Especially if you could potentially get a quarterback there. If it's a tight end premium, maybe Pitts or something like that. Brock Jordan, Travis QB, FSU. Yeah, like, can we just get 2 or 3 good quarterbacks next year? That's all I care about. Like, give us some guys that can run and like gonna go in the first round.
For real.
That 1 year productive struggle, you can get some ridiculous value, especially when someone overpays for 101 Bijan. Yeah, the 1 year productive struggle is just like the most like elite strategy in all of Dynasty, especially last year or this year, because the future class is going to have high end players in it. Yep. And probably that's going to be true most years. But I mean, you 1 year productive struggle well this year out of a startup, and you have Caleb or Harrison or Drake May on your team next year. And if you're collecting first, maybe even multiple of those guys.
Yep. No, agreed there. If being a running back plays 17, if a running back plays 17 games, they usually aren't a bust. I mean, I would honestly disagree with you there. The reason being, with Dalvin Cook, like, although it doesn't feel like he's a bust, if he's giving you 17 non-productive games, and non-productive,
he had long touchdowns in some games, punched in some
non-productive might sound like a little bit of a hyperbolic statement, but he had 233 points in 17 games last year. So let's just do the math there. 233 divided by 17. He was giving you 13.7 PPR points per game. If you were to tell me right now that my second round pick, sometimes first round pick in some leagues, was giving me 13.7 PPR points per game, I would view that as a bust. Now, if he gave you 233 points in 12 games, like, that's a different scenario, because when he was on the field, that means he was giving you league winning type of production. I would rather a player play less games, but provide more value for my lineup in those games than play all 17 and be more of a non-factor, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, 14 PPR points per game. He was like the 15th best running back in fantasy, which he was drafted ahead of that, A, and B, he didn't get injured, which was this was the most games he's ever played in his career, which if you put money in Vegas on a 27-year-old running back with 1,300 career touches playing the only time he's ever played more than 14 games in his entire career, coming at age 27, like, nobody would have taken that bet. So I'm honestly shocked he played 17 games. I think he actually hit one of his higher ranges of outcomes this past year.
Which is crazy, because it's like part of the analysis was that he had, and I don't say injury prone for any running back that suffered injuries. Like, we were all in on Christian McCaffrey, although people wanted to put in the injured, injury prone narrative on him. What people don't realize is Dalvin has a legitimate degenerative shoulder. Like, he's literally getting off-season fucking shoulder surgery because his shoulder keeps popping out of place every time he runs the damn football.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, it's like if I was playing running back right now with how bad my fucking shoulders are.
Danny likes to always relate Dalvin Cook's shoulders to his own shoulders. It's classic. Yes, Spicy, we are still good for after the stream. Yeah. One thing I wanted to ask, make sure if you guys are in the chat right now, we're probably going to rip through like our dynasty rankings, tier list style, like we did for the startup rankings, but like overall positional ones. If you have any other ideas, feel free anytime, DM us, Discord message, drop it in the comments. What do you want to see? Like, we're at the time in the year now where like we're starting to get out of rookie draft season. Maybe you still haven't had yours, but for the most part, all of mine are done. And I think a lot of people like to have them right after the draft. If you want to see a specific thing, like, hey, can you research this? Like, I've always been curious. Like, I will literally do it. Like, if it's a good idea, I will do it. So let me know and let us know if you want to see us do anything specifically, and we will make sure to make that happen. So definitely feel free to always leave, feedback and comments and suggestions down below. And, anytime you can get access to us. So we're going to finish out probably these comments that are on the screen here, and then we'll probably hop out of here. Josh says, would you all do 105, 107, 201 for the 102 in a 1 quarterback 10-team league? So he's already going to get Bijan here. You'd be giving up essentially like wide receiver 3. So QJ 107 is probably Charbonnet or Flowers. 201 is probably some middling wide receiver or running back. And you're getting Gibbs in a 10-team league. Josh, if I was in a competitive window, I would absolutely do that because you're going to get Bijan and Gibbs as like your running back core, and 106, you'll still probably get a fine player. And you'll be able to build out that core of that team. And if it's a 10-team league and there's like not a lot of starting lineup spots or whatever, like you just want studs at that point. So I'm cool. I'm cool giving that up for 102 potentially.
So I just want to point this out. Henry, what was the opportunity cost of taking Dalvin in the second round versus Etienne in the fourth? Naji, yeah, no, he was a bigger bust than Cook. I'll admit that.
Sanders was like a seventh
round pick. Kamara was a bust, yes. And Jonathan Taylor was hurt.
Yeah. It's never gonna work out perfectly that we're like, oh, this guy is not gonna be good and he's just gonna like be terrible, like have like 2 points per game. Like what we're saying when we were talking about Dalvin Cook being a bust last year was he's going to be disappointing for these reasons. If he stays healthy, he's probably not going to be the same player, which is exactly what happened. Hence why the Vikings are literally going to cut the fucking guy. And second, he could also very much get injured because of his touch workload, his age, his shoulder surgery, all that stuff.
And I quickly want to address this. Wasn't as bad as you guys were saying. Yeah, no, like wasn't as bad.
He was fine. He was fine. That was how he was.
We sound a little bit hyperbolic, but I mean that's how you have to view a top 24 investment in the running back position, right? If your player is fine, that doesn't like that was a bad pick in my opinion.
Yeah, like Ezekiel Elliott in 2021 was also just fine, but he was nobody was happy that they drafted him.
And like the point is, right, is there's so much fragility at the position where we know when a starting running back goes out. I mean, we've made this point in terms of zero RB a lot of times, but it's different with people point out, quickly, that a 15 PPR point per game season is a 15 PPR point per game season. The reason I would counter that a little bit in regards to wide receiver versus running back is due to the fragility of the running back position. Because if a running back misses time, guess what? The player that drafted very wide receiver heavy can just spend all their fab on the next man up, the Elijah Mitchells of every single year. Whereas there's not the case for that at the wide receiver position. And in fact, the best wide receivers you pick up off the waiver wire every year are usually rookies, are usually second-year players that are starting to break out. And nowadays, I feel like people are so sharp to the point where they're not leaving them undrafted anymore.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, that's usually how it's worked out.
Yeah.
Basically, what we were saying about Cook last year was that his ceiling wasn't super high. And because he played running back, why would you not just then draft a safer wide receiver option who had a similar ceiling? And in fact, most of the wide receivers going around him, their ceiling far exceeded 15 points per game. Like people were taking Dalvin Cook over, CeeDee Lamb and shit last year. Yeah. And obviously we just saw kind of how that worked out. So Adam says, how does quarterback and rookie values change in an 8-team, 10-team superflex league? I mean, in a superflex league, quarterback will lose value in a shallower pool of teams. Like an 8-team superflex is not nearly as strenuous as a 12-team or a 14-team or 16-team superflex. So I would say, like, if you were doing an 8-team superflex draft, is the draft order the same?
Like, what do you
mean?
Like,
we have it ranked like Bijan, Bryce Young, Anthony Richardson, CJ Stroud, Jahmyr Gibbs, Jackson Smith, and Jigba. An 8-team superflex. How does the rankings change?
Well, I think you can argue Gibbs over.
I think I would not even just argue it. I would absolutely take Gibbs over CJ Stroud in an 8-team superflex.
Over CJ Stroud, I'm saying like you could argue Gibbs over Richardson and Bryce is what I'm saying.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And an 8-team. It is like it's hard for me to fully like know the context because I haven't played in any 18-team or 8-team leagues. I've been in a 10-team and like it feels like quarterbacks are devalued comparative to a 12-teamer, but they're still valued very high. Like elite quarterbacks still move the needle a ton in a 10-team. And an 8-team, like I would assume like the very, very top guys would still hold their value, but once you even get past the mid-first round, like you're talking about guys that realistically are more so mid-second round picks in an 8-team team or 8-team league, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like maybe you take CeeDee Lamb over like any of the non-top 7 quarterbacks in that scenario. Maybe that would be the case. I don't know though. Again, I'm speaking off of what I assume the market impact would be because at the end of the day, like I said, I don't play in any 8-team leagues.
For sure. Yeah. 12-team superflex, start 10 tight end premium. Chase, trade away Jamar Chase, receive Higgins, Jordan Addison, a potential top 5 for. I'm taking the package there. I love Jamar Chase, but that's enough for me to move off of him.
Yeah, like if this was like a start 8 or 9, maybe you take Chase.
It wouldn't change my opinion.
In a start 8 or 9?
No.
Yeah, no, I would take the package as well, especially if it's a top 5 first, like guaranteed. That was like the 108. How do you change your opinion on that?
I would still do it because I think Higgins
Really?
and Addison is borderline close.
If that was like top 8, I think I might take Chase, but because it's top 5, I'll
The
just
only
take
way
the
I would
package.
take Chase is if it was a shallower league and it was like a late first.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know.
Hero wide receiver is a thing. Yeah, literally facts. I got left in no man's land at quarterback in this draft at 108.
Facts.
Yeah.
I
Wide
mean,
receiver talent is also yeah, that's the other thing too.
yeah,
The
that's
league has
fair.
moved a lot more towards like, like how many teams in 2018 had like 2 wide receivers that were productive? Like the Steelers? Like that was it. Like there was no like we have like 11 NFL teams that produce like 2 top like 36 options
Yeah, no,
now. Like it was
exactly.
like 2 teams every year before that.
It was pretty crazy. Like when the Falcons did it, people were like shocked because I remember the narrative going into that year is, well, how can you take Calvin Ridley high if Julio Jones is going to be a top 12
Right.
wide receiver? And the data shows that the two teams can have 2 top 15 wide receivers. And now you
Yeah,
see
no.
like 3 occurrences of it every year.
Yeah,
Like
no, it's pretty crazy now.
who were the ones last year? It was Waddle and Hill. It was Devontae Smith and AJ Brown, and there was a third one, right? Oh, I mean Higgins and Chase, points per game wise.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's pretty crazy.
What would you trade to get Jordan Love in a superflex league if you're a contender, but need to fill a quarterback too while Murray is hurt? Watson is my other quarterback. Have Bijan, ETN. So, I mean, if your team is loaded, I
Day one.
personally would go for a contending quarterback over Jordan Love. I think it's going to
Yeah.
cost you too much to go after Jordan Love for
Agreed.
what you're looking for because he's not going to start games for you when you have Kyler. Like, I would rather trade for Geno Smith, Kirk Cousins, Jared Goff, or somebody like that.
Yeah, I mean, like worst case scenario, say like none of the other guys are biting, and you have to work down. Like in that
I mean, you have
scenario,
DK
would
and
you?
JSN. I would just go trade for Geno Smith if I was you.
Well, I was gonna say, like, so let's just say hypothetically, even if you can't access that range of like the car, the Goff up, right? By the way, I don't know why Levis is so low here. I gotta raise him. But like even if you had to settle on like Aaron Rodgers, like in your scenario, if it's super cheap, like I don't mind doing that either.
Hell, even if you have to pay like a second for Jimmy Garoppolo just to get by, like
Yeah.
I honestly don't think it's that big of a deal
Well,
because I think Kyler will probably be on the field by midseason next year, and
yeah.
I'm not like gonna mortgage my like first rounder next year just to get Jordan Love to fill in. Like I would
Right.
rather pay a cheaper cost to get somebody that I can use to fill in because that's what they're doing, not like gonna
Yeah.
start over Kyler once he's back.
Yeah, I mean the wide receiver draft classes from 2015 to 18 made running back more appealing just by default. Yeah, no, I remember that too.
Well, I
That
mean, we also had the 2017 running back class that contributed quite a bit to that too.
I mean, like even 2016 you had Henry and Ezekiel Elliott. 2015 you had Todd Gurley and Melvin Gordon. Even 2014, which draft was that? Right
I don't
before
think
the
there was any
Gurley
good
draft.
running backs in that draft.
Oh, right, that was the Bishop Sankey draft. Yuck.
Yeah, and I can't remember who else was in that draft. It was bad, but yeah, it was mainly like and Bell was in the 2013 draft. It was mainly like 2016, 2017, and 2018 too, because the 18 had Barkley and Chubb and those guys too. So yeah, it honestly, the ebbs and flow kind of just determines like it's all just talent. Like we do all this shit when it comes to fantasy football, and it's all just like take the best player on the board. Like it's the simplest form of fantasy football, and it's always the same thing. If there's like 35 talented wide receivers in the league, and you go into a fantasy draft, and there's like only 20 of them are going in the top 6 rounds, like then wide receivers are undervalued. If every NFL team right now had a workhorse running back and they were all going valued as they're going right now, then running backs should be undervalued.
Well, 100%. And that's another thing too that people got to take into account, right? Is the dynamic of how the NFL is now, right? Back in 2010, 2012, let's just say hypothetically, how many running backs were getting over 300 touches in a year?
I don't know the exact numbers, but I would assume it's more than that.
I'd
I actually saw somebody put out a thread kind of debunking that theory a little bit because like a lot of people would assume like nobody's getting 300 touches now, but I think last year there was like 8 or 9 running backs that got 300 touches.
Really?
And yeah, and it was like more than like 2014.
Really? Eh?
Yeah, like that's what
I would like
this
to
is
see
what
that.
I mean. I think running backs are starting to become a little bit over analyzed and over scrutinized to the point that when you have a running back with a good profile and a path to a 15, 18, 19, 20 plus PPR point per game season, like, and he's available in like the 4th round, like it seems a little bit egregious to be taking, wide receiver 2s and 3s over them.
Yeah, no, that's fair.
Yikes. Spicy almost bought a Zach Wilson jersey or an Elijah Moore jersey. I mean, I hope he didn't do it. Watched him carry my Hoosiers over ASU or over OSU. I can't even talk. Hurricanes looking strong. Yeah, these guys are just talking college ball here.
I will say, I just quickly want to mention there are more running backs than I thought. To be fair, keep in mind there's 17 games now, so
that's fair. But even if you went on a per
factor.
touch basis and went back those years, I still think touches wise we're getting like decently good production out of those guys.
Do the math real quick. 300 divided by 16 equals to about 18.75 touches per game. The running backs eclipsed 18.75 touches per game. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. It was 9 guys, yeah, or 8 guys. Sorry,
man. Like I think people would assume that the number's like 3.
Yeah. Yeah, it was 8 guys. Keep in mind, some guys obviously will miss games in that stretch, but I mean, by the way, too, Derrick Henry 23.9 is just fucking ridiculous.
Yeah, that's pretty crazy.
That's fair.
Katz took over, says, how's my team? He's got Jefferson, AJ Brown there at the 1-2 turn there. I like that start. I don't like being that down at quarterback, but you kind of got screwed value-wise where you were picking. Like all the top quarterbacks go off the board. You go Jefferson. All the next tier quarterbacks go off the board. I might have gone Dak Prescott in your situation over AJ Brown, but yeah. I still think that's fine. 2 at 3.8.
See, that's the thing.
He'll be worth that pick if he ends up like hitting.
Quickly, this is the thing why I will always take the quarterback at least 1 through the first 2 rounds personally, because if you're comparing value bundles, would you rather have Dak Prescott and Drake London, or would you rather have AJ Brown and Tua Tagovailoa? Because the answer is pretty easy to me.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think it's tough. You got to know the room a little bit and know how the quarterback position is going to be valued. I honestly probably would have deviated for a second quarterback before you did with Russell Wilson. I probably would have gone after like Pickett or something. Or Daniel Jones even potentially. I guess they were kind of off the board where you were picking, but yeah, I think the team looks pretty solid. I prioritize quarterback more in superflex drafts, but I think you built out a pretty strong contending type of roster there.
By the way, quickly want to add in terms of the running back workload point. So in 2017, 2018, 8 running backs averaged over 20 touches per game, which is fucking ridiculous. Last year, how many was there here? Was that 4 running backs did? So although you're still getting the guys like in between like the 18 and the 20 range, the reason why it was such an appeal back in even 2017, 2018 was how high the ceiling of touches was. Yeah. Because realistically now, like people are pointing out, if you're drafting a running back, they need a receiving profile. Whereas that wasn't really as much of a case back then, simply due to the sheer volume that the running backs are receiving. Like we're talking about a year where Le'Veon Bell averaged like 28 touches a game. It's ridiculous.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's the really high end range of outcomes touches wise is not usually going to happen anymore. But I do think controlled touches for a lot, like depending on what the threshold you set. Like if you set how many running backs are averaging 350 touches in a season, it's probably like none now, and it was maybe 3 or 4 back then. And now it's like, but if you lower the threshold to 275 touches or something like that, then I'm sure the numbers balance out a little bit more.
Yeah, agreed.
Am I the only one who thinks JSN going over Lockett on underdog is crazy? I don't think it's crazy. I think JSN should be going over Lockett.
Yeah, no, I agree there. I think JSN should.
I think Lockett's still a value, but I think JSN should absolutely be going ahead of him.
Are you real question? Is this going to be one of the most straightforward target situations like in the NFL next year? Like I would be shocked if the 3 of those guys didn't combine for like a 70+% target share on that team.
I actually think that their target shares will be almost identical across the board. I think they're going to all have like a 22% target share across the board.
Yeah, that's the thing, right? If they're like, let's just say hypothetically, DK is the leader of that group. He's a 24.5% guy. JSN, maybe because he starts slow and then gets into the groove. Like his profile, I'd be shocked if he wasn't at least a 20% guy this upcoming year. And then Tyler Lockett, you already know, is going to be up in the 20 to 25% range as well. So it is funny because it is a kind of similar situation to that we saw in Dallas back when CD was drafted. And obviously people are going to point to, well, wasn't Michael Gallup the big loser in that situation? Well, it's because Dalton Schultz ended up developing into a tight end that got 89 plus targets a year. I love Noah Fant, but based on what I saw in terms of the tight end usage of the Seahawks last year, would it at all shock you if one of them got over 70 targets? Because it would absolutely shock me.
It wouldn't shock me if Will Dissly led them in targets.
God,
if he's even on
fair.
that team. So
But
I don't even know.
But like, what do you think the odds are realistically of a tight end on that team actually commanding like 65, 70 plus targets? Because as much as I love
I
Noah
still think
Fant, I
Fant
don't
can
see it.
play, man. I wish they would just
I
trade
think
him.
he can too. I think, but the thing is, in that situation with how they used him, like I don't see him having over like 550 receiving
No,
yards.
neither do I. I don't think he's going to be a highly productive guy.
Yeah.
DK plus Madison and 4 first for
And for a fourth,
a fourth. Yeah.
you might need to retype this. I don't understand a
Yeah. This
word
isn't
of
really
that
English,
statement.
but DK plus Madison and a fourth in 2024 versus Smith and Jigba and a second in 2024, half PPR superflex. I think I would take DK
Yeah.
Madison in the fourth over Smith and Jigba in the second.
Because I mean, like Madison is about worth the second right now, but given the news with Cook, maybe he raises in.
It's
It feels like
probably
with,
even value, to be honest. It's
like,
probably an even trade.
do you think there's a scenario where if Cook was cut tomorrow, that the market would value Madison as a top 14 running back in Dynasty?
That seems a little high. I think they would probably value him as like a top 20 running back, though, like in the
I agree.
Pacheco, Rashad White range.
Like I think he would be above Miles Sanders. Do you think that?
Yeah, probably, which is pretty wild to say. I think my takeaway is like I'm just gonna keep stashing Dwayne McBride. That's what I'm gonna keep doing. I don't really want to pay for Madison, even though I actually did trade for him a couple weeks ago before all this news came out. I just want to draft Dwayne McBride in the 4th round of all my rookie drafts or pick him up as a free agent, which I've pretty much done in a lot as well.
Speaking of Madison and Cook, and I know Henry's going to laugh because we just had the conversation about Cook. I got him in the 11th round in this draft, and I thought that was a fine price point. But oddly enough, I got Cook and Madison on this team. So if Cook went somewhere else, that'd be really great. Honestly, I didn't even take it as a quote-unquote handcuff situation. I took it because I just thought both players were at good value. Madison at the 13-3. Cook, as much as I dislike him, I think 11-03 is a fine point, especially going after fucking like some of the guys that he went after.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so let's finish out a couple more questions here, and then we will hop off because I am starving. Josh, one thing the last thing on the Dalvin Cook situation, because Henry, I mean, he makes a decent point here. He says, we can't see the future. Otherwise, we wouldn't have taken Jonathan Taylor at 101. This is why people took Cook last year, because we don't know the future. But my point and the reason we
had a process for fading.
We were kind of trying to predict the future a little bit, right? Like we were like, the future, the past dictates the future in most cases. The past suggests 27-year-old running backs with a lot of touches who have injury histories are not usually good investments.
Well, I mean,
and
like
all of fantasy football is us trying to predict the future. So
I mean,
that made a good case for fading Dalvin Cook.
Well, Dalvin Cook, I wanted to add too, was a player that like through our process led us to fading him. Because I mean, with the research on the touch apex, with the research in terms of the efficiency drop off, it wasn't just, oh, Dalvin Cook old, therefore we fade. No, like there's genuine data, genuine research that supports that claim that player or running backs that decline in efficiency and are getting older are typically not good bets in the first 2 rounds of your draft. I know you mentioned with Jonathan Taylor. Jonathan Taylor's
that's a statement where I agree with you. We can't predict the future. Otherwise,
I agree with that.
Jonathan Taylor at 101, but there was nothing to tell us that Jonathan Taylor was going to get injured. He doesn't have any history of injury.
No.
He was a 23-year-old running back last year. Like there was no real precedent to say, don't take Jonathan Taylor because we can't predict the future. There was precedent to say Dalvin Cook is a bad pick because of this information.
Well, and Dalvin Cook, I quickly want to add, is like a player that I feel like is one of the examples of like us, because we like did our own process, found our own research, led us to fading a guy like Dalvin Cook, and maybe led people in here to fading Dalvin Cook. That might be the difference in the 50 to 65% margin that the consensus was very high on him, and we picked that out. In terms of Jonathan Taylor, again, you mentioned nobody could predict the injuries, and from a realistic standpoint, the only way somebody could have really faded him outside of maybe even the top 2, because I think like McCaffrey and Taylor obviously was a 50-50. I had McCaffrey, you had Taylor, but like they were both fucking like stoned in clear-cut top 2 picks. The only thing that you maybe could have convinced yourself about JT is that he wasn't catching a lot of passes in the year he was RB1, and his RB1 season was one of the lower RB1 seasons that we've seen. So therefore, if you convince yourself, I don't know if I want to take a quote-unquote running back that doesn't have that legendary upside at 101, I don't know how I feel about that. I would have understood that type of process, but like Corey kind of said, if you just said, oh, he's going to get hurt just because I feel like it, like, no, like we don't do anything like that.
Yeah, and I'm excited to do the video that I did last year that I really enjoyed. It was the one with the thumbnail that had Drake on it. It was like, don't draft these running backs, draft these ones instead or whatever.
Yeah.
That video concept was based on like what types of archetypes we want to go after at early round running backs. And it was like, oh, this group of running backs, older running backs, guys that were over the age of 26, they busted at this rate. They got injured at that rate. They hit at this rate. They boomed at this rate. They were meh at this rate, kind of thing. And that video was a lot of fun. And I'm excited to do that for this year's class as well, or for this year's like redraft group as well, because that was a lot of insight to tell you that, like, hey, young running backs that are going in the top 3 rounds of ADP generally means that they're going to probably break out, because we wouldn't be drafting them that high. And they boomed at like a much higher rate than older running backs. And that was one of the takeaways that we had. Like, for example, Javonte Williams was one of my biggest targets in all of drafts last year. I could not have predicted him to blow his ACL out. Like, that's like, we can't predict the future situation. He might have been unreal had he stayed healthy. And same goes for Breece Hall, who obviously was probably going to be potentially the RB1 in fantasy. Like, he was unreal when he was on the field. So, it's sometimes you have a process and your process leads to you something, and then football happens. Like, it sucks sometimes.
Breece Lightning.
Yeah, exactly. Thoughts on this? Breece for Damian Harris.
Breece Lightning.
Give me Breece Hall. That was what you were talking about there. So,
sorry. What up? Dynasty Superflex, have Herbert, hit Diggs, Dak, traded other picks, and have 3 first-rounders in 2024. Pick 2 players. I have consecutive picks in round 6. Dalvin, Rashad White, Johnston, Judy, D-Hop. I mean, I'm just going to take receivers there. I don't want any of those.
I'm taking the 2 young guys, too.
I'm taking Johnston
and Judy.
Give me Johnston and Judy pretty easily.
I mean, he took Diggs with one of his picks already, so does that sway you at all? He does. He says he has 3 first-round picks in 2024, though. So in your situation, Raphael, I probably wouldn't have taken Diggs, knowing that you were building more of like a rebuilding type of team. Like, maybe at that pick, you could have, like, who went around Diggs in our draft here? Maybe you could have gone with like Metcalf or London or something like that. But I personally would just take the young guys and kind of maybe look to shop Diggs at some point, knowing that you have 3 ones next year. You've built out a good shell for like a productive struggle type of team or a 1-year punt.
Realistically, in that setup, I'm literally just punting my running back position. You have 3 first-rounders in 2024. We have a lot of potential high-end running back prospects next year. I would say, obviously, there's no like Bijan next year. Maybe like, I don't know. I think somebody's going to materialize like a Gibbs, but I don't think anybody's going to go top 12 in the NFL draft, right? So if you're looking at it, right, you're going to have probably at least 7 running backs go within the first 70 picks. Like, I see that being the case, honestly, next year. That is how strong of a group it is. Like I mentioned, there's no maybe Bijan or maybe even a Gibbs, but I do think that whole 6 or 7 pack is about comparable with what Charbonnet was this year. A guy who
for sure
overall, right? So I feel like the number of names that are going to go in the mid to back end of your first round next year is going to be a lot more advantageous for people that are drafting running backs, because this year, realistically, like, you have Bijan at the 101, you have Gibbs going top 5. If you don't have a top 5 pick, like, you're taking a stab at your Devon A-Chain. You're taking a stab at maybe Charbonnet gets work in Seattle, or maybe he outplays Kenneth Walker. You know what I mean? Like, it's not as nice of a situation. Whereas with those guys next year, like, let's say 1 or 2 of them go at the back end of the first round. Let's say a couple others go in the top 50. Like, you're looking at a draft range in that mid to late first round of, if you faded running back, if you punted running back this year in a 1-year punt situation, you are loading up on potential future 5th round startup picks this time next year.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. We're going to head off here in a second. Yes, I think Stafford's a decent value there in underdog. We'll definitely do some more best ball drafts coming up in the month of like June, July, especially too, when we get a little bit more into best ball season. Since no other quarterbacks are available to trade for, the Love owner wants A-Chain. What would you add to A-Chain to get that done, or just sit and wait? Again, I probably just wouldn't go after Love. Like, Love is just not the type of quarterback I would go after, because, I mean, you're looking for a productive player. Like, why even go after Love? Like, he's no guarantee to be a great redraft quarterback this year. I would just go after Cousins or something like that. But, I mean, to answer your question, I would say A-Chain plus like a 3rd is probably all I'd be willing to give up for Jordan Love.
Yeah, maybe a late 2 at the max, but like, I even that I wouldn't. Like,
I'm just not high on Jordan Love. Like, it's not a guy that I'm really loving to go after. So thank you guys for joining us. We, just went off like, this was like the Dalvin Cook, process stream rather than like a rookie Superflex mock draft. But, we kind of we don't like doing like regular Q&As. We like doing stuff in the background. So that's kind of what we were doing in this video today. So thanks for joining us. Check out yesterday's video talking about the players that are skyrocketing up my dynasty rankings. That video is doing pretty well. So appreciate the support on that. And stay tuned for next week. We'll probably be doing dynasty rankings by position, like tier based format. And also, again, feel free anytime if you guys have a great idea that you want to see us dig into, research, just something that you feel like we're lacking from a content standpoint, feel free to leave it down below in the comments, leave it in our DMs on Twitter, Discord, wherever the case is. And definitely, I have nothing else to plug. So with that being said, peace out. We'll talk to you soon.